Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Cool. We've got a few people coming in. I'll just wait a minute and we'll just let everyone else get logged in, and then we'll get started shortly. Okay, cool. So just to make sure everyone can hear me, there is a comment box on the right-hand side. Can you just pop a comment in there if you can hear me right now? Cool. Thanks, guys. Okay, we might get started. So welcome everybody to this webinar for Master Plumbers Australia and New Zealand. My name is Summer Adams and I'll be representing Master Plumbers Australia and New Zealand today, and I'll just be moderating the sessions. So any questions you've got, anything like that, I'll be keeping an eye out for those. I want to thank Nathan for being here today. Nathan Warneck is the Business Director of ITRO in Melbourne. And he's a really well-respected IT professional. Today we're going to be asking Nathan to share his expertise and his knowledge about the world of IT and cybersecurity, and just all of his knowledge about that, how to protect your business, specifically a trades business when you've got a lot of customers that you're dealing with, all of their details, everything like that. We'll also be talking to him about the cybersecurity landscape in Australia and how one breach can be hugely detrimental to your business. Most people have found the chat box over there at the moment on the right-hand side. If you haven't found it yet, feel free to take a look at that. If you do have any questions throughout the session, feel free to pop those into there and I'll keep an eye out for those. And if we don't get a chance to answer them all today, which hopefully we will, we can get some answers sent out afterwards as well. But that's about it from me. I'm going to hand everything over to Nathan now, when you're ready.
Okay, hi everyone. As Summer said, my name's Nathan Warneck. I'm the director here at ITRO, and we look after IT for a lot of small and medium businesses around about the place. So thanks for taking your time out to listen to our presentation. And our goal, I guess, today is to really educate and inform you about the dangers of cybersecurity. A lot of times people think that it only happens to big corporations, or it won't happen to me. What have I got that anyone would be bothered with? But really, cybercrime today is big business. People, organizations are making a lot of money out of targeting all sorts of different businesses. So it's really important that whatever business you're in, whatever size you're running at, that you be aware of the dangers of cybersecurity and make sure that you're as well protected as you reasonably can be. So we'll have a bit of time, as Summer said, for any questions at the end of the presentation. So feel free to post them in the chat as we go, or save them till the end. And today we're just going to look about some facts about cybersecurity in Australia. We'll have a look about how those facts relate to small businesses. Is it something you need to worry about? Some different case studies from businesses that have been affected by this. And then we'll look at a few different threats, how you can spot them. We'll see a video on how some social engineering can happen to expose threats. And we'll look at what you can do to stay secure in and out of the office, what the best products are to protect your business. So we'll get started now as we look at the, sorry, I forgot to click on these slides as we got started there. So that's the points we're discussing. So we're looking now at cybersecurity in Australia, and really, there's a common, as I said, a lot of people think it won't happen to them, or a lot of people think, well, this is my IT company's problem to sort out. I don't have to worry about it. It's the IT department, whatever. But really, cybersecurity comes down to everybody. Most breaches come through an individual. So we're trying to educate everybody to be able to just be aware of what they need to do, how it affects their PCs, their laptops, smartphones, and whatever devices they're using, and just to be aware of the dangers of cybercrime. So cyber statistics that we can have a look at. Over 90% of breaches are going to begin with an email. So that's a really sobering fact. If you can intercept the breaches at that point, you're going to save a lot of attempted hacks on your system. And then some other facts there, a lot of businesses, as you can see, don't provide training to their staff. And you can also see over 70% of breaches are caused by human error. So it's a really big thing to, oftentimes people are looking at it as a technology solution to this problem, but really educating users and having the human solution to it is just as important as having the technology in place. So as we look at breaches and cybersecurity, how long does it take to detect a breach? Well, in most cases, a breach can happen, or the cyber criminal will use the credentials that they've stolen within 10 days of breaching your system. And the problem with that is oftentimes the breach is not detected until more than 90 days after the hack, and then can take even longer to rectify and remedy the problem. So we're really looking then at trying to shrink these time windows down so that the damage is minimized, or preferably that you don't get a breach at all. But the time it takes to act on a breach is really important. And so on average, a hacker can have your information for almost 6 months before you can even know that they're in your system, that they're doing damage with it. And we're seeing that a lot of the time, that people or the hackers are penetrating systems and they're just sitting there collecting information for a long time, so that their attacks can get very smart and very intelligent. And you'll see that in some of the case studies we talk about later on, how much they are leveraging the information that they've collected during this breakout window, during this breach period, before they actually act and do something about it. So we'll look now at a couple of these different breaches, and these are some clients that we've worked with. They're real case studies. They're breaches that we've been involved with. And the important thing to note here too is all of these clients, they were breached because there were steps in their cybersecurity layer. We talk about when we protect against this, against having many layers of protection. All of these breaches occurred because of these organizations not implementing these different layers that they needed to. In each case, if the organizations had done what they should have done in protecting themselves, there would have been no breach for them. So the first one we had, first case study we had, was that of a company that made blinds. So quite a low-tech business. They made blinds. They supplied them to a lot of sort of higher-end commercial organizations. As a business, they were only 15 or 20 people, so quite small. And they had a breach. Somebody hacked into their Office 365 tenancy. They were able to hack in because of a weak user password that one of their staff had. And they just sat there and gathered information, and they were able to watch emails coming and going. And they effectively determined that this customer had a large supplier bill to pay. So they had this supplier that they'd imported some blinds from. They then impersonated that supplier and said, hey, before you pay that bill, can we just give you new bank account details? So the customer took this on good faith. They changed the bank account details. They transferred the payment to this other bank account. In this case, it was $30,000. Transferred it offshore to someone else, and the money was gone. No way to track it, no way to get it back. And this was, as we said, a very intelligent breach because they had been into their system and they had gathered this information and they were able to interact with the client really quite intelligently, and it was really a very convincing attack to the client. So we'll talk later about some of the things they could have done to protect themselves, but that was one example. Another one of our clients, a retail business, they had a very similar breach, and this time the amount that they transferred was $500,000. So exactly the same process. Somebody penetrated their Office 365, watched their emails, and they were able to convince them to transfer $500,000 to somebody that they shouldn't have. So it really shows the importance of securing your email and having even good processes within your organization to manage this so that you don't just act on the advice of an email or something along those lines. Another case, we had a law firm that we work with, and they had what we call a CryptoLocker attack. So someone at that firm received an email, they clicked on a link in that email, followed the instructions of the link for whatever reason. It was quite convincing to them, and resulted in some software that they installed onto their PC. And this hacker then proceeded to encrypt all of the data that they had right across their network. So all of their files, all of their client files, they could no longer access this data. And in this case, had to go back to a backup. But nowadays, with data breach laws and things like that, this constitutes a situation where the client has to report themselves in the National Data Breach Scheme. They have to report that their client's information was made available to an outside party. So really big impacts in all of these cases, what were quite small businesses that were attacked. You know, the law firm was only a very small law firm, only 5 people. So it shows that really no one's beyond being attacked or approached in this way. So we'll look at some of the cost of different data breaches. These numbers can sort of be a bit daunting, can sound a bit unrealistic sometimes. I guess 5.7 million is the average cost of a data breach in Australia. You've got to remember that at one end of the scale, you've got huge organisations that perhaps it costs tens or hundreds of millions. But it's easy to discount the fact that, as we said, smaller organisations are still losing money. In these couple of cases, you know, each of those organisations cost, you know, tens of thousands of dollars is the cost of recovering. And sorry, I'm pointing out there, the average for Australia is 3 million. Globally, it's 5.77 million. So the average length that it takes to identify and contain the data that's lost in a data breach for last year was 281 days. So that's a figure that's growing, and it's showing the increase of these data breaches. And we're seeing that, you know, this is just an increasing trend, that criminal attacks are taking even longer to identify, they're taking longer to contain, and really before rectification, sometimes going on for almost a year before this. So the longer that this goes, the more the risk is to your business, and the more the cost is the potential loss to your business is. So we'll have a look now, I guess, at cybersecurity in small businesses. As we said, you might think that large corporations are the main targets, but cyber attacks on small businesses are a really big deal. And one of the reasons that small businesses are often targeted for cyber attacks is small businesses can be gateways to big business. And so we have an example, a very well-known example of a cyber attack involving Target in the US and a company called Fazio Mechanical Services. They were doing their HVAC for Target, And effectively, Fazio's systems were hacked. Somebody was sitting in a car park and was able to steal login credentials from Fazio's Wi-Fi network. They were then able to use these credentials to log in to Target, because Fazio serviced the HVAC systems at Target, and so they had access to the network at Target. Once they were inside the Target network, that's, I guess, where the fun began for the hackers, because they were able to steal more than 110 million customer cards and personal records, and they were able to target stores right across the US for Target. So I guess for everyone that's listening today, the sobering thing, or the thing to keep in mind, is that this was a small business, Fazio Mechanical Services, that was used to gain access to a much bigger business, and probably not that dissimilar to some of the businesses that are perhaps listening in today that became the gateway to a much bigger hack. And this is really quite a common method to use this, because contractors are often easy, and you can imagine Target's probably got some pretty sophisticated security in place, but once the contractor that's working for Target becomes a trusted person, then the contractor becomes the target, and they can become the weak link into that attack. So it just goes to show that even as a small business, you need to be on top of your security and on top of your best practice to make sure that your logo is not featuring on a slide like this in the future. So we'll look at a few different statistics about how this affects small businesses. So you can see there, almost half of attacks were against small businesses last year. And whilst you've got on the figure 43% of attacks, you've got 87% of small businesses believe that they are safe from cyber attacks because they've got antivirus software. But we're going to have a look at why antivirus software alone is not really enough to protect yourself in that case. So some of the biggest attacks that we've had in Australia, just to give you some context around that, you had National Australia Bank that had 13,000 customer details leaked because of a cyber attack. ACU had their staff email accounts hacked and their systems compromised because of that. And so this then led them to be able to get all of their users, or trick a lot of their users into entering their username and their password into a fake login page. Symantec, who's a IT security business, gave hackers access to a lot of account numbers and passwords for their clients, which was a very embarrassing attack for them. Princess Polly, which is I've learnt today was a fashion website, has exposed customers' personal and payment information, and even Mikey, which is a public transport system in Victoria, breached privacy laws by releasing information that they weren't supposed to release. All different breaches, and all of these organisations have had to report themselves under the National Data Breach Scheme, and the obligations of that apply to all businesses. So it's really something to keep in mind. So we'll have a look now at some different threats and how you can spot the threats and what you can do to prevent yourself from becoming a victim to those threats. So you might have heard of phishing. That's a very common effect. So that's really something where you get an email that appears to be from a trusted source, as you see in the slide here, and it's got the goal of getting your personal information. So this email looks like it's from your bank, and they're asking you to enter your bank account and username and password. We're pretty, most of us are pretty onto these emails now. We've been getting them for a while, and we are pretty good at probably filtering them out, but still, these are getting more and more sophisticated, and people are still falling victim to them, which is why they're still being used. So we want to keep an eye out for them. Then we get to the next type of attack, which is spear phishing, and they're really the attacks that we talked about in our case studies before with the blind company and the retail business, where they're using a similar type of attack, a phishing attack, but Spear phishing becomes a bit more personal. They're gathering information and they've been able to research you a little bit, and they're creating messages that are personal to you, that are relevant to you, perhaps even messages that you're expecting to receive, so that when you get the message or the spear phishing hack, your defenses are lower and you're more likely to respond and click on them or do what or follow their instructions. So you can see here, we'll look at this in a little bit more detail, but you can see here some of the image on the slide here. You want to check the from address and looking at the proper from address, not just the display name. Often, Outlook will show the display name, Nathan Warneke, but you click on it and you'll see the full email address there. So you want to look for that full email address and make sure it looks like a realistic one. And as we say, often with bank accounts, we know now not to put our bank account details, but often it'll be different things. It'll be, postal services, delivery services. Perhaps you're waiting for a delivery. If someone's compromised your system, they might know that you're waiting for a delivery from Amazon or something like that. So you need to be extra careful to look out for everything here and make sure it's legitimate. So we'll have a look at a couple of examples of what to look for here. As we said, the first one, we want to look at the email address, not just the sender. So this is the display name here. It says PayPal, but you want to check the email address here, and you can see that email address doesn't look kosher, does it? PayPal at notice-access-273.com. You'd want to be pretty suspicious of an email address like that. Most likely if you get an email address from PayPal, it's going to be somebody at paypal.com or something along those lines. So that's the most obvious way to look out for a phishing email. The next one to be looking out for is the domain name. You can see here MS Outlook at 94 at service.outlook or out1ook.com. So it looks like, at first glance it might pass your test, but you want to be on the lookout for anything that doesn't look quite right. Often they'll try to use domain names that are very similar to a legitimate domain name. Again, purpose being to lower your guard and try to get it past you. Number 3, and this is where the phishing attempts of these days are getting a lot more sophisticated. We've probably seen in the past a lot of phishing attempts, but it's where the grammar is horrible, the spelling is horrible, things like that. So look out for that, because it's often a giveaway. If you get an email from Amazon, they're probably not going to have spelling mistakes and typos in it. Same from Microsoft or anything like that. So you can see here you've got spelling mistakes. You can see there's a threat here. They're trying to introduce some urgency into your reacting. If you don't do this, something bad's going to happen. And then you can see there's different punctuation errors, the fake email signature. And it's worth noting sometimes these the privacy notice, things like that, they will actually link to a legitimate website, a legitimate at Microsoft website or something like that, because they don't really care if you go and look at the Microsoft, privacy notice. That doesn't get in the way of them achieving their goals. The main thing is they want you to then click on this link and follow their instructions to do whatever they want you to do to introduce a data breach. The next one, number 4, looking for suspicious attachments or links. So you can see here, this is saying here's an invoice and it's got a name, invoice.pdf, but this is where you can sort of be a little bit perceptive and notice that that doesn't really look like a PDF logo. Normally if you get a PDF link, it gives you a different thumbnail to that. So you can see that that might not be a PDF. So then you want to click on and see the full name of that file name to see if the extension really is PDF. Maybe the extension is different and it's designed to launch some malware onto your PC. Or you can see here you've got an email that it looks like it's from Netflix, but if you hover over that button that they want you to click on, you'll get the URL will pop up on where your mouse is, and you can see there where that's going to go. And if that, again, if the domain name doesn't look like a legitimate Netflix domain name, be very careful about clicking on that. Maybe follow a different path to verify that that's okay, because like we said, usually if you got an email from Netflix and they wanted you to click on something, the domain name would be netflix.com or something along those lines. And again, even here you can see the email address. They've bodged up a different email address, netflix.ssl.com, so it's not really a proper Netflix email. The last slide. This is a little bit of social engineering here, creating a sense of urgency. If you don't do this now, something bad's going to happen. You need to get onto it straight away. Whatever it is, they're all clues that that this is perhaps a phishing attack. So with any of these emails, and I guess all of this, we're just trying to get you to think about whatever email that you've got there. Just give it a second thought before you act on it, particularly if it's asking you to do something that's a little bit out of the ordinary. Or even if it is something in the ordinary, just give it that second glance, make sure that it looks all right. If it's in doubt, get rid of it. If it's really serious, somebody will contact you again in some other way, and or reach out to the other party in a trusted way that you know is a legitimate contact method, and verify whether that's something that you need to do. So the next one we'll have a look at is as opposed to phishing attacks, malware, adware. You've probably all seen these before. This is a bit of an old image, this one, but it's all different types of marketing banners. But what you often see these days is, even on a legitimate website, it's asking you, you'll go to a website for, a media website or something, and it says, oh, would you like to install, would you like us to notify you of changes? That's really just another way of these types of things getting installed. So if a website's asking you to let you know if it can notify you of changes, always best in most cases to say no to those, because that's going to install an add-in from that website that's going to be able to track you, know what you're doing. Perhaps the website wants to know your location. Unless it's, Google Maps or something like that, or Uber, where you think, yeah, it needs to know my location, probably best to say no to those questions on any sort of a website. So all of these things basically work on the basis of malware, installing some malicious software, and usually after you've clicked on something dangerous, and it will install an attachment, and then once that's installed on your system, it might block you from going to a website. It might redirect you when you try to go to a legitimate website. It redirects you to a harmful website. It might try to obtain information that's that you've been typing in, or just in general disrupt what you're doing. So this type of attack is still very common, but really it's becoming less common because all of these attacks take a lot of technical work, they take a lot of coding from hackers, and inevitably this is what can be blocked with varying degrees, but this is what can be blocked by your antivirus software and things like that. But the attacks that are becoming more and more prevalent today is what we call social engineering. So we're going to show you a video that just, this was a demonstration video that was conducted at DEF CON, which is a big Nerdfest conference where a whole lot of hackers get together and they talk about security and things like that. But what we've got here is, in this video, hackers demonstrate how easy it is in some cases with social engineering. So with trying to convince somebody of something, that to get people to do something that they shouldn't do, to open up access to something that they shouldn't open up access. And businesses are receiving more and more these sorts of calls. I know our reception gets these calls all the time, people purporting to be somebody that they're not. And they're just trying to gather information. They're trying to say, find out, oh, what is his schedule? What days is he in? What's his mobile number? As they piece together this information, they're able to then go into more targeted attacks. So Summer, perhaps can we hit go on this video?
Yep, I'll just start it right now.
Sure.
DEF CON is the biggest hacker convention of the year. It's a place where thousands of hackers come to hear talks, to demonstrate their newest hacks. It's actually a place that's so dangerous to be on the internet that they tell you to turn off the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth on your phone, and they tell you not to use the ATMs too, because those could be hacked as well. This is the DEF CON ballroom. It's sort of the main room where things are happening, and it's pretty wild. I think this is car hacking village. This car's locked. Can you get me in?
I'll unlock it for you. Should be good.
Hacking is no longer like this fringe activity, and if you are at DEF CON, there's a good chance that you're here because you want to learn what could happen to you or your company.
Anyone here first time in the SCCTF? Holy crap.
I invited Chris to hack me with his team, but they're gonna hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
We help people with human security issues by testing vulnerabilities for like a network test, but it's for the people network. We test those vulnerabilities, see where the holes are, and then help people learn so they can patch them.
Can we try some of this? Can we try some, see if it works?
Yeah, we probably could have our star Visher here make some phone calls as
Let's do it.
Sure. Do you want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it. Who are you gonna call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider
Okay.
and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna spoof from your number, so it's gonna look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. My husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry, I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for uses information and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
gmail.com?
Jessica gets my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Shh. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account. Okay, my
Jessica uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry, so there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my password.
Thank you so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right, thank you.
Holy shit. So they just gave you access to my entire cell phone account.
You're gonna have to go on and change your password now because it's Jess, my name.
And all it took was a crying baby and a phone call.
Yes.
I really thought that my cell phone company would protect me. I mean, like, this is the most basic stuff, and they're not doing it. And if they're not doing it, you know all these other businesses aren't doing it either. Anyone with a phone and an internet connection can do social engineering. But I was curious, what can a hacker with serious coding skills do?
Well, DEF CON is the world's biggest hacking convention. It's hacking everything, hacking social, hacking hardware, hacking software, hacking various systems.
I asked Dan Tentler, a well-known security researcher, to turn all of his firepower on me.
I did get into quite a number of things that I found.
So what were the first things you did? How did you start hacking me?
I quickly found your Squarespace blog and had an idea. Basically what I did was created a bogus Squarespace site and sent an email to you, a phish asking you to go to this website, run this certificate installer.
And I did it, because I'm an idiot.
So once you ran that, it gave me access to your computer, and I created several fake pop-ups that looked like system pop-ups that would ask you for your credentials.
You didn't even have to have my passwords.
No, you gave them to me.
I gave them to you.
Yeah. So I stole your 1Password keychain.
And 1Password is where I store all my other passwords. So effectively
And your social security number and your Amex stuff and all your stock trading and bank information. I can send email to everyone in this room as you. I am you right now, if I wanted to be. If my evilness is working correctly, it should actually be taking pictures of your desktop and pictures through your webcam every 2 minutes. And I have been watching you for about 2 days now. In coffee shops, at your mom's house, on a plane. Here's your editing stuff. There's you like.
Oh my God, so this is literally
every 2 minutes.
through my webcam.
Yeah, through this guy.
How badly could you have messed up my life?
I could have made you homeless. I could have made you homeless and penniless.
How would you make me homeless?
Like, I have control of your digital life in its entirety. I have all your credentials, I have all your access to all your financial information, all your work information, all your personal information. I can pay people with your bank account or your Amex account. I am you. I can fully impersonate. Like, the only thing I couldn't doctor would be like your fingerprints.
This is like as bad as it gets.
It's ridiculous, yeah, it's bad.
So it turns out that Dan Tentler is very good at his job. I mean, he hacked the hell out of me. He got everything. I mean, frankly, I want to take my computer and throw it into the deepest part of the ocean, and I want to become a hermit, and I want to never touch a piece of technology again, because holy shit, that was everything. That was the keys to my entire life, and he just pulled them out of his pocket.
Okay, it's a bit scary, that video, isn't it? But it's a really good example of, you know, how you got two different types of attack. One, the lazy hacker who just, you know, phones up and uses the phone and pretends to be you and manages to get past different levels of security. And then the really, you know, the really technical hacker that is pretty clever and it was a very targeted attack. But we're going to have a look at a few different ways now of things that you can do so that you can stay secure when you're in the office, when you're working online, when you're working outside of the office. Just some, I guess what we call best practice steps, things that will make you more protected than, you know, 80% of the population and make you, hopefully make the hackers move on to a softer target. So a few steps here that are the real basics that we really push pretty hard with all of our clients to have all of these things enabled. Multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, that means that it's security that's based on something that you have, e.g. an app on your phone, and something that you know, so your password. So the example of that is you log into your computer in the morning, which is what happens at our office, and then an app pops up on my phone and says, you're trying to log in, is this you? And I have to say yes, and and then at that point, I'm able to log into the network. So you can enable multi-factor authentication on your computer network in your office. You can enable it on your Office 365 tenancy. I believe you can enable it on your Gmail account. You can enable it on your bank accounts. Most providers these days will allow you to have multi-factor authentication. We talk about using strong, unique, complex passwords, so passwords that have different characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, exclamation marks, hash, dollar signs, whatever, symbols. Not using the same password on multiple accounts. We're all guilty of this. We have our password based on our birthday or anniversary or something, and it's the same password that we use to access everything. The best way to get around using that is to use a password manager such as LastPass or Dashlane that allows you to have really complicated passwords and then have just one master password that you use to get into those, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. With your mobile devices and computers, make sure that you've always got a password or a PIN or a fingerprint on your mobile devices. Run your software updates. Windows 10, Windows 7 is end of life now, so you shouldn't be using Windows 7 anymore, but keep Windows 10 up to date. Keep your mobile device up to date. If there's an update that's been pushed out from Samsung or Apple, whoever, apply the update. Check for the updates regularly. Make sure that if you're getting apps for your mobile devices that you stick to the official stores. This is not a guarantee of success, but it's a good best practice is to make sure you're getting trusted apps from the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. Make sure that you don't allow apps to access unnecessary parts of your phone. For example, I got a little robot vacuum cleaner recently, and it has an app that you can install on your phone to control it. And the first thing the app did is said, I want access to your IMEI, which is your mobile device's unique serial number. And my radar immediately went up, and I was sort of like, why does this app need to know what my mobile device's serial number is? And I stopped installing it. So who knows what that app was trying to do. But so when the app is asking you for permission to access different things, keep an eye on what it's actually asking you for. And enable remote tracking, locking, and wiping on your device. So if you lose your phone, you want to be able to get onto your IT provider, get into your IT department, whoever it is, and tell them that you've lost your phone. At that point, they can lock your phone, they can wipe your phone, and do what they need to do to make sure that that stays secure. And obviously to use a screen lock on your phone. When you're out and about using this is particularly when you're traveling, make sure that you don't have your device set to just automatically connect to every public Wi-Fi that's out there. Choose a non-public Wi-Fi for a secure connection. If you do have to connect to a Wi-Fi, have a VPN. Perhaps your business has a VPN provider that you can use, so that when you are surfing, you're then going via the internet connection in your office. And if you do have to go on a public Wi-Fi, if you're in, the airport lounge or something like that, be careful of what you do. Maybe stay away from your banking websites or anything that's high security. And usually too, when you connect to a Wi-Fi network, Windows will ask you, is this a public network or a private network? Always choose the public network. This tells Windows to put up extra security as well to make sure you're that little bit safer. And this is something that I always do. If you can, hotspot to your mobile rather than using public Wi-Fi. These days in Australia, most plans have got decent amounts of data and it's very fast. So public Wi-Fi is just generally a bad idea unless it's really it's the access method of last resort. Try to use your mobile rather than any public Wi-Fi. So here's what you need to know as an individual. Some different things that you can use to find out if your email address has been compromised and your password is compromised. If you go to this website here, I think Summer, we're going to share these slides later on, so you'll be able to get this. But you can put your email address in here, and perhaps put if you've got multiple, put your Gmail address, your Yahoo, whatever in, and you can check then whether or not your passwords have been compromised to any of these sites. And you can see then what passwords have been compromised, and you can make sure, often those passwords are not to anything that's that important, but you can then make sure that the password is not used on anything that is important. Maybe you've just signed up to some weird app on your phone and you've got a password for that. But you can, if that's been compromised, just make sure you're not using that password anywhere else. As we said, use a password manager. A password manager allows you to have really complicated passwords that you don't have to remember. And then you can just have one master password that's a really good, complex, long password that you know. And the password manager then supplies the password to the different things that you log on, so that you don't have to have the same password on every site. If you have used the same password on lots of different sites, it's best to go through and change that. Often the password manager, I know LastPass does, will actually tell you, hey, you've used this password on multiple sites. So you can then use that information to go through and update that. And as we said, make good use of multi-factor authentication if that's available. You've got the Google MFA, you've got a Microsoft MFA, LastPass and Dashlane have their own MFA. So all of those allow you to set up and use multi-factor authentication on all of your key accesses. And if you have ever been a victim of cybercrime, it's good to report that. And if any of your customers' information has been leaked onto as a result of your hacks, then you actually are legally obliged to report that crime to the National Data Breach Scheme, if I can spit that out. So as a business, it's a good idea to have IT guidelines so that your staff know what they can and can't do, what they should and shouldn't do on public websites, and really get your IT provider to help you create a good IT security guidelines so that their staff know what's safe and what's not safe to do, and follow through and enact those guidelines. When you're traveling overseas, there's a lot more risks with your devices. So you're often in unfamiliar areas, and perhaps your guard is down a little bit more than usual. So you need to be really sensitive to the theft of any sort of information, any sensitive information, anything. Often you are in those cases using your device on different Wi-Fi networks and things like that. So you want to be really alert to anything like that when you're traveling overseas. Before you travel, make sure you record the details of your devices. Try to, as we said, have your IT provider have that access to be able to remote lock or remote wipe your device if it is compromised, and make sure that your device, if it's got that option, is encrypted, and that you've got passwords and all of those sorts of things turned on. Here's some tips that you can use whilst you are traveling. Make sure you report any device that's been compromised or any suspicious behavior that you see on your device. Assume that anything that's disappeared and then reappeared, if you're suspicious about that, just assume that that device has now been compromised, and maybe your phone got lost for a little while and then came back to you. Assume that that's been compromised, and be very careful about anything you do on that. Never lend your device to anybody that you don't know or trust. Don't use shared charging cables with people that you don't know or trust. Don't use charging stations that are in cafes or airports. Often those charge cables have smarts that are built into them that allow a hacker to access your device and get information from that, which can then be the gateway that the hacker can use to get into more of your more complex parts of your security. So, and obviously too, don't leave your devices in your checked-in luggage. Try to keep them in your possession, and keep your, don't store all your passwords on a post-it note stuck to your device or anything like that. That's pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised how often we go along and we see passwords stuck to all sorts of different things. That is not really the best way to keep it. Keep it in a password manager. It's the safest way, and the password manager can be secured with your thumbprint or something along those lines. So we're going to look at a couple of different products now that can be used to protect your business. We really suggest, to protect your business, that you engage, a managed service provider, an IT provider, and they can give you really good advice on what's out there, the best technologies that are available to keep you protected. But there are a few different things that you can install on your different devices. If you don't have that, if you're perhaps just running as a small operation, you don't have a regular IT provider, there's a few things you can do, and we'll look at a few of these that you can use to protect yourselves. So first of all, you should be using, if you're using Windows, you should be using Windows 10. Windows 10 has security updates applied to it all the time. Microsoft Defender is part of Windows 10, and it's really a very good antivirus solution that's built into Windows 10. Doesn't cost you anything anymore to have it, doesn't cost you anything to turn it on. So make sure that it's turned on. To do that, you can just click on the Start button, type in Defender, and it'll pop up. User access control is another feature of Windows 10. So generally speaking, that's probably turned on by default. What that does is stops different programs and installed programs running on your computer in the background or without your awareness. Oftentimes, and this might apply a little bit to this audience today, if you're in the business of using your laptop as a tool and you're installing different bits of software that you use to log into different management systems and PLCs and things like that, you'll have people turn off user access control because it's a bit of a pain, and every time you go to install something or run something, it says, are you sure you want to do this? But leaving that on is a really good extra step of security to make sure that your device is protected and things can't run in the background. And Smart Screen works in much the same way. As we mentioned too, Password Manager is a really good standard step to have. It allows you to have all of your passwords together in one encrypted vault. The Password Manager can installs then a plugin into your web browser and installs as an app on your mobile device. And so, you know, when you go to your bank website, instead of having to remember a 12-digit complex password that's unique from every other 12-digit complex password, your password manager can put that in, and it can prompt you with a thumbprint, or it can you can have just one really good password that you don't use anywhere else except on the password manager. And it prompts you, it says, do you want to give this your password to this website? You put in your password and you say yes, and then the password manager provides this really complex password through to the website. So you don't have to remember a million different passwords. It's a really good best practice way of managing that. The two biggest, most common password managers out there are LastPass and Dashlane, but you know, there's heaps. If you just search Google password managers, you'll come up with lots of them. As an ad blocker, a couple of the browsers these days, Firefox, do a good job of blocking ads just anyway, but you can use uBlock Origin is one that a lot of our guys use to block ads and things from popping up in different web browsers. So I guess the takeaway from all of this is that we really want people to think, don't assume that your business is too small or that it won't happen to you, or that hackers are targeted on bigger people. As we said, hacking's big business these days, and they're making a lot of money out of it, and they're targeting all different types of organizations, all different types of individuals right across the board. So assume that it will happen to you and take steps to protect yourself from it. Follow some best practice. And you know, don't be overly concerned, but be cautious, and you should be right. If you'd like to keep up with us, we often post different alerts about different security threats that have popped up, or we'll post tips and tricks, and we have a lot of different articles that we keep online. You can follow us on any of our social media. We've got our blog page there, itro.com.au, Itro News, and that's as we said, we often post security articles there and things that can help you secure your network or your device. So thanks all for your time and for listening to me today, and I hope it's been informative. So I guess we just ask if you have any questions. You can, I'm not sure how you want to handle that, Summer. Do you want people to type their question into the chat? Or?
Yeah, that'd be great. We did have one earlier, but it's disappeared now, so I'm not sure if it was already answered. So, but I'm pretty sure I got it. I think it was around do most breaches over email come from opening attachments?
Definitely, yep, definitely. So attachments or links on the email. So you know, click here to do this or do that. So that's definitely the main path of breaches.
Cool. Yeah, if anybody, cool. So Fern, is it? The video will be available. You'll get that emailed in the next couple of hours, usually about 3 hours afterwards. You'll get the link to watch the video again, so you can use that to show to your staff as well. I think that's a really good idea, showing this presentation to your staff and letting them know that this is what you're working on, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really, like, it's not fictional, that stuff. Like I said, we had that in our receptionist a couple of weeks ago. Had someone phone up and they were just asking for all sorts of random information, you know, oh, what days does so-and-so work and what's his email address? And, you know, it's, you sort of think, like I said, you think it won't happen to you, but it is out there and going on.
Yeah. And Jane's just asked, are products like AVG worthwhile, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different antivirus softwares. You know, sometimes you've got to be careful that some of these things can be they can be more trouble than they're worth, and it's better to have a security system that's in place and working than one that is so secure that it blocks everything and you end up uninstalling it. So, which is why we often say Windows Defender is pretty good, because it just does its job in the background and it doesn't interfere with you too much. But AVG is good. WebRoot is another one that we often use, which is a good antivirus solution that doesn't cause too many problems. But yeah, there's lots of different ones out there.
Cool. And one other question, with email phishing, that kind of thing, if you just open the email, does that cause a problem?
Not normally. Normally, you have to run the attachment or click on the link. Just opening the email won't normally be a problem.
Cool. Cool. That looks like all of them, but I'll keep going, and then if anybody else has any, we'll come back to those. Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you, Nathan. Actually, Peter just had a question. Sorry, just reading that. What does it say? 1Password Manager was mentioned in the video. Is this a known problem app? 1Password.
Yeah, good question. I noticed that as well. I've watched that video a few times and I've never noticed that little detail. But yeah, I haven't heard of any particular known issues with 1Password. I haven't used it before, but I think, you know, with that was a very targeted hack that guy did, and getting access to your password manager is certainly your worst, you know, that's your sort of doomsday scenario. Once someone's got access to that, they've got access to everything. So you'd want to guard access to whatever password manager you had very, very carefully. And the password managers usually have different levels of security you can enable within the password manager. So you can enable biometrics, you know, like thumbprints if it's on your phone, or you can enable it to, you know, how often does it re-prompt you for your main password, things like that. How often do you need to change your password, your primary password in the password manager? So there's different levels of security that you can enable within them.
Cool. Yeah, sorry, back where I was. So yeah, thank you, Nathan, for presenting today. Thank you to everybody for joining us. We do have some other events planned for Master Plumbers Australia and New Zealand, specifically another webinar coming up on the 31st of March. Yeah, 31st of March, yep, that's right. You can check those out on the Master Plumbers Australia Facebook or Instagram, or all the other states also share those details to all of their members. So if you're involved with one of these associations in your local state, then you'll hear about that from them as well. But yeah, that's about it from us today. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Nathan, and yeah, I hope you have a good day.
Thanks everyone.